Welcome back, Capital F football fans, to the O&O Sports YouTube channel. Today, we are taking a look at the biggest matchups of Week 11 of this 2025 college football season. As always, be sure to like and subscribe if you do enjoy it. It helps me out a lot. And check out the other O&O Sports social media accounts to be entered into the 75 or die giveaway challenge. The rules will be on the screen, but basically, if I do not go over 75% correct predictions on this season, you could be entered to win up to $100. And if I do correctly predict over 75% of this year's games correctly, you still have a chance at 50. It's literally free money. Go ahead and get entered into that. And without further ado, let's jump into it, starting with 9th ranked Texas Tech versus 8th ranked BYU. Texas Tech is a 10.5 point favorite in Lubbock, which means FanDuel has Texas Tech winning at about 31-20. And here we go again with BYU, always the underdog, still somehow 8-0 on the year. They have pulled off upset after upset to get to this point, and now they're 8th in the country, but still an underdog versus a very solid Texas Tech team. And the Cougars are coming off a bye this week, but in their last matchup, Bear Bagmeyer absolutely went off, over 350 total yards and 3 touchdowns. In that matchup versus Iowa State, he really blossomed into a quarterback that I didn't even think he could be to this point, and he led that offense to outscoring Iowa State 24-3 in the second half. It was a great performance all around. BYU is one of the hottest teams overall in football, but they are taking a step up this week in terms of competition in facing the Texas Tech Red Raiders. And this is a team that matches up very well with BYU. BYU likes to run the ball at a pretty high percentage, and Texas Tech stops the run at one of the most elite levels in all of college football, just 2.4 rushing yards allowed per attempt on the season. And they're also very good against the pass. They're generally elite all around. This is one of the best defenses in the country for the Red Raiders. On top of those stats, 2.4 takeaways per game, 32% opponent third down conversion rate, and 3 sacks per game. So like I said, generally elite all around. But the biggest narrative for Texas Tech and for this game really is going to be the health of Baron Morton. Obviously, he goes down in that Utah game and is injured for a few weeks. Will Hammond comes in and picks up right where Morton left off. Now Hammond's down, Baron Morton's back in, and last week he did have a pretty good performance against Kansas State, helped propel them to that second half surge in offense and helped them pull away. But I still think it is a solid question. Is he 100%? If he isn't, he's pretty close to it. And with that, I have Texas Tech winning this matchup 24-13. And the next matchup we're going over in this video is a very underrated one this weekend. It is the Mississippi State Bulldogs taking on the 5th ranked Georgia Bulldogs, who are an 8.5 point favorite on the road versus Mississippi State, which means FanDuel has them winning at about 33-24. And Georgia has been the more efficient team overall. Todd has them 9th offensively, nearly 6 yards per play for the Bulldogs, and they're 38th in points per play. In the past few weeks, they have been more focused on establishing the run, which is very important for a quarterback like Gunnar Stockton, who isn't going to take over football games. He's not an elite passer, but he can absolutely have great games as long as the running game is churning out drives. But Mississippi State, man, they have just figured out a way to stay in football games this year. They haven't won many of them. They're just 1-4 in conference, but the average loss is by 7 points or less in SEC play for the Bulldogs, which is very interesting because on paper, Mississippi State isn't a very efficient offense. Todd has them at about 38th offensively, but they average just 5.2 yards per play, which is 85th in the country, 66th in points per play, and they average over a turnover per game. But somehow, some way, they've managed to make it work, and that might just be the Jeff Lebby effect. He is an offensive guru, one of the best offensive minds in the sport, which would explain how they've been able to pull this feat off. But this is only Jeff Lebby's second year, and as good as Mississippi State has been this year, they are still a building team. They need a couple more years to really solidify that, in my opinion, before they're able to pull off a win like this. But despite that, I think Mississippi State can and will be able to put up points. I still have Georgia winning though, 30-21. And next, we need to take a look at 19th ranked Missouri taking on 3rd ranked Texas A&M. Texas A&M is a 7.5 point favorite, which means FanDuel has them winning at about 28-20 in this matchup. This is going to be another matchup where the favorite is taking on the underdog on the road, which always makes for a pretty interesting matchup. But how can we start this segment without talking about Texas A&M's season? They are 8-0 to start the year with at least one more guaranteed win on their schedule in Sanford. So the 8-4 curse has officially been broken. A&M fans, you can thank Mike Elko for that. But this is a Missouri team that you absolutely cannot overlook if you are the Aggies. And yes, I do know Bo Pribula is out, but this is still a very, very talented team. They're going to be able to lean on Jamal Roberts and Ahmad Hardy to keep the offense steady, which they've already been doing all season long. Ahmad Hardy, one of the best running backs in the SEC. Jamal Roberts, one of the best change of pace backs in the SEC. And they'll most likely be leaning on them a little bit more now that Pribula's out, but they still have Matt Zollers, who coming into this season was a top 10 quarterback in the 2025 recruiting class. He is one of the most talented quarterbacks in the country, albeit still very raw, still very new overall. But with that, Texas A&M is going to be coming into this matchup more healthy. They are missing Le'Veon Moss still, but they've been able to work around that for the most part. And in general, they're coming in as one of the best teams in the country, if that 3 next to their name on their ranking didn't convince you of that already. Todd has them as the 3rd ranked offense and the 17th ranked defense nationally, and Todd is not lying to you. 38 points per game, 8th in points per play, and 13th in yards per play. That is elite, folks. And leading the charge on offense is Marcel Reed, who has over 2,300 yards and 23 touchdowns. He is one of the best quarterbacks in the SEC and maybe even in the country in general. But I would be remiss if I do not bring up 2 key names for Missouri that every single time I've covered Missouri so far this season, I've brought up so far. And those 2 names are Zion Young and Damon Wilson. They're elite edge rushing tandem. And A&M does have a solid line. They should be able to contain them a little bit, but guys like this are not going to not affect the game, if that makes sense. And if they can get to Reed and impact his rhythm in this matchup, get him on the ground maybe 4 or 5 times, this one could very well swing in Missouri's favor, but that is a big if considering, like I said, just how good that Texas A&M line is. I think they could get to Reed, but I don't have them affecting his rhythm too bad, even though they are going to get home at least once in this game. Ultimately, I have Texas A&M beating Missouri 27-17. And the next matchup we're going to talk about in this video might surprise you a little bit. It is Iowa versus 6th ranked Oregon, who is a 6.5 point favorite on the road, which means FanDuel has them winning at about 24-17. And instantly, as I'm speaking to you right now, I know what you're thinking. I know what the people who see the clip of this inevitably are going to think. Colton, it's Iowa. They probably have a very good defense, and the offense probably sucks really bad. And to those people, I would ask you this question. Have you watched an Iowa game this year? I don't think you have. If you believe that, if you're writing Iowa off just because they are Iowa, I would ask you, have you seen Iowa this year? Because yes, they have an elite defense, probably better than it was last year even, but the offense, it's good. It's just flat out good. It's not okay. It's not good for Iowa. It is just very good. And if you don't already believe this is the craziest year of college football we've seen in the past 2 decades, just listen to this and try not to be convinced. Iowa has outscored their opponents in conference in the Big Ten 156-95. 156. That's not 70-60. It's not close matchups. They are beating teams by a lot. They averaged 31 points in Big Ten play. 31 points per game. Does that sound like Iowa to you? If you say no, that's because it hasn't looked like Iowa in the past 10 years. Their only loss in conference is to Indiana, who is killing everybody. Last week, I think they won by 100 against Maryland, and they lost by 5 points, and they allowed Indiana to score 20 in that matchup. And I get it, they're 6-2. They did lose to Iowa State, but I think the fact that this Iowa team isn't ranked at all is a disservice not only to college football, but to sports, to the whole world, to everybody you've ever met. I cannot believe they are not at least a top 25 team in the AP rankings. And I'm going to go ahead and call my shot here. I think they beat Oregon in this matchup 23-20. I know I usually go over both teams before I make my predictions, but I am so confident that they are going to be able to wear that chip on their shoulder, come out defensively in Kinnick Stadium, which is one of the hardest places to play in the country, and they're going to be able to take it to Oregon, who is a great team. They have a great offense, borderline elite offense, but we've seen what happens when Oregon plays elite defenses this year. See the Indiana game, they struggled, only scored I think 20 in that game, and against Wisconsin, not even an elite defense, like a pretty good defense, they only put up 21 points. And had Wisconsin not been a complete corpse of an offense this year, Wisconsin might have been able to pull off the upset in that matchup. And all I ask is that you don't let the AP ranking fool you into believing that I was not going to compete in this matchup. And now that I've had some water and taken a deep breath off camera to really calm myself down from that one, let's go ahead and jump into the last matchup of this video. It is the 4th ranked Alabama Crimson Tide taking on LSU at home. Alabama is a 9.5 point favorite, which means FanDuel has them winning at about 30-20 in this matchup. And this is one of those matchups where we probably saw at the beginning of the season, maybe even like 4 or 5 weeks ago, and said, that's going to be a good one. And now it doesn't really seem like that. It seems like more of a formality. We all think Alabama's probably going to win this matchup, but I'll get into why it might be a lot closer than a lot of people think. Alabama did struggle against South Carolina 2 weeks ago, but that game was in Williams-Brice, one of the most hostile environments in the SEC. And coming off a bye week, coming back home to Tuscaloosa will more than likely make a big difference for Alabama and its offense and defense in this matchup. But I have to highlight the biggest thing for this matchup, the biggest narrative coming into this week for LSU, and that is, of course, they fire their coach, Brian Kelly. They're getting the head coach firing juice in this matchup, and this one is a doozy. Alabama fans, you might want to close your ears for this one. Frank Wilson takes over as LSU head coach. He is a Louisiana native. He was the assistant head coach and running back coach, and he has been around the program for a very, very long time. And this guy lives and breathes both the state of Louisiana and LSU football. He was their assistant head coach from 2010 to 2015, left for a little bit, came back when Brian Kelly came in 2022, and he's been there since. And we talk about names like Lane Kiffin, John Sumrall, James Franklin, Eli Drinkwitz potentially getting the interview for this job, but it's Frank Wilson's to lose. He's the acting head coach, and he is going to interview for this job the rest of the season. And what better way to do that than to win in Tuscaloosa, which might sound a little radical, but the players are going to be motivated. This is a guy who loves LSU. He's going to be able to get the buy-in from the players that maybe a Brian Kelly lost. The cancer is out of the building, and now stepping up to the plate is somebody that everybody loves, everybody knows. They're going to want to play for this guy and for LSU, and I think we've seen crazier things. I think LSU is going to play the most motivated they have all season long, but with that, I do have to trust the fact that this Alabama team is more consistent all around and is going to be very, very talented, obviously. I'm taking Alabama to win, but I think LSU will give them a scare. Give me the Crimson Tide 27-24. And with that, thank you for watching. As always, be sure to like and subscribe if you did enjoy it. And like I said at the beginning of the video, go down to the other O&O Sports accounts to get entered into the 75 or die giveaway challenge. Have a fantastic week of football watching, folks, and I will see you in the next one.